The greater Tampa Bay area, with a population of more than 3 million residents, is the second largest metropolitan area in the state of Florida and one of the fastest growing in the United States. Located on the Gulf Coast of western central Florida, the highly populated counties of Hillsborough and Pinellas include the main cities of Tampa and St. Petersburg, where their combined populations of nearly 700,000 residents call its beautiful bayfront landscape home. As important as the water that feeds these beautiful views, so too are the three highly traveled bridges that span Old Tampa Bay: the Gandy, the Courtney Campbell, and the Howard Franklin, all vital connections between the two growing cities. The latter of the three bay crossings, and the most traveled by far, the Howard Franklin Bridge carries Interstate 275 and its more than 175,000 vehicles that travel across it each day. Originally constructed in 1959, the 3-mile crossing was so popular, additional capacity was needed and a second bridge structure built in the early 90s. Due to the rapid growth over the past 35 years and future yearly increases of more than 5% in the area, construction on a new bridge structure that will add much-needed congestion relief began in the fall of 2020. In July of 2021, crews began widening the causeway approaches needed to accept the future structure. With an ever-growing decline in available natural habitats, this fresh, new, beach-like surface would soon serve as alternative nesting habitat for 2 American oyster catchers. This state-listed, threatened shorebird species, with a population of less than 500 breeding adults statewide, were looking to grow their family within the $865 million footprint of the largest bridge construction project in the state.
My name is Joel Johnson. I work at the Florida Department of Transportation. I'm headquartered in the Tampa office, which is District 7, and I help shepherd projects from planning to construction by helping procure permits from the environmental agencies and stormwater planning agencies, drainage, in order to pass them off to construction so they can build the projects. So in order to begin the project, a very thorough review had to take place, including environmental review with, which is a term called the PD&E in FDOT nomenclature, but it's the NEPA process essentially. There's environmental stakeholders, including National Marine Fisheries, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and others that all get brought into the project, get a chance to view it and comment on it, and can give feedback on the project as well.
Yeah, I'm Ricky Grogan. I work for Archer Western Construction. I'm the project director on the Howard Franklin Bridge replacement. The project's unique surely by scale. It's an $866 million project, which at the time was the largest project led by FDOT District 7. It's a huge marine project, so we peaked at over 28 cranes, 84 barges, and roughly 20 pieces of yellow iron. It is a hurricane evacuation route, so it's obviously important to the community and making sure we can get in and out from Pinellas County, and also a major corridor getting to Pinellas County beaches.
I'm Marianne Brinson. I'm the Senior Project Engineer for Atkins Realis. We are the CEI, which is a construction engineering and inspection firm that's hired by the DOT, who's the owner, to oversee the construction, making sure the job is built per plan and spec. So this is definitely a once-in-a-lifetime project. This is one of the largest projects in the state. It's 3 miles of bridge over the ocean, which is over the bay, which is it's pretty impressive to see, what all goes into that. But also a lot of people don't understand it's also 3 miles of roadway. So we've got bridge, we've got roadway, just about every aspect of building that can be out there. We've got everyone sees the boards that tell you, silver alert and all of that. We've got tons of ITS. We've got tolling that we're trying to implement as well. We're going to be demoing the old bridge at some point, reversing traffic on one of the existing bridges. So there is a lot involved in the project, and it's definitely a phased approach. You got to do it one step at a time. So having some birds land right in the middle of your phased approach can complicate things. Someone was actually riding through the project and spotted the oyster catcher. Just happened to be driving by and just happened to spot it. So they made a phone call, and that's when the phone call came in, to the department, and then we're all going, where is it? So we all got out there to go see where it is. Is it indeed an oyster catcher? Because 65 miles an hour on the road, I mean, you never know. So and we went to go spot it, make sure that we saw what we saw, and it was indeed what it was, and then we started taking proper measures.
The first step was raise our hands and say, what do we do? So we met with the CEI, Atkins-Realis, and they engaged FWC and FDOT. So we started off with just a kickoff meeting on the path forward.
Hello, my name is Alexis Cardis. I work for Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and I'm currently the lead area biologist down at Dinner Island Ranch Wildlife Management Area. At the time, I was regional shorebird biologist for the Southwest region, based out of the Lakeland office. And my role in this position, I was kind of the first contact when FDOT figured out that they had American oyster catchers nesting on the Howard Franklin Bridge during their construction. We first learned about the American oyster catchers nesting on the Howard Franklin Bridge in 2022. It was about April, May. That's kind of right in the middle of breeding season for these guys. Breeding season can start anywhere from about February 15th, and it can go all the way till about the end of August. So any time in there is a prime time for them to be breeding.
In the call from FWC, we were able to enlist their help. We requested they come do a site visit with us so that we could all see it.
We got the call, decided to have a shorebird biologist go out there and kind of assess the situation, see how close they were to the construction, how close they were to actually to the 275, and kind of see what we could do to set up a nice barrier so that they could continue doing the construction work, but also protecting those birds, allowing them to incubate the nest properly so that the eggs would hatch and then raise their young. And of course, that's what we're here for. We're here to kind of step in, assess the situation, and help these birds be successful during the breeding season. American oyster catchers are kind of unique in that the chicks, once they hatch, stay with the parents for about 60 to 90 days afterwards. And that helps them learn how to forage, how to fend for themselves, where they need to go to find food, and also learn how to fly. So when something happens like that in a construction area, obviously our concern is, are they going to be able to raise their young out there without the young being injured or anything like that? And then potentially move on when those chicks are ready to fly and go be shorebirds near the shoreline.
Our initial concerns were this is nearly $1 billion project. It could potentially shut the project down. So there's 320 personnel that ultimately depend on this project for their daily livelihood. So it could have been a severe impact to the job.
Once we figured out where those two nests were, we talked with both DOT and the contractors on site. They were very willing to work with us. They wanted to work with us. They understood how important it was that these birds are nesting there with how few we have left in Florida. Every single pair counts. Every single nest counts. The more chicks that we have, the more those population numbers are going to increase. And that is what the whole goal is to increase population numbers for these American oyster catchers. We began discussing different options of, how big of a buffer zone that they would still be able to do their work, but also protect those nests. One idea I had that I brought up with DOT and the contractors is if they could let us put a camera up, a game camera that was cellular, so those photos got sent right to my cell phone, and I could kind of monitor from my office or other places as I'm out in the field to see, are the birds still incubating? Do we have any chicks yet that I see running around? And then I would call them and let them know, hey, I think something's going on. Can I come out and check the nest and see if the eggs hatched and see if we have chicks? So we were able to do that on the Pinellas County nest.
So when FWC came out with the DOT and we were there with the contractor, we were having our meetings, it was actually it was quite impressive watching everyone with their willingness to be able to work around the birds. The construction site, clearly we had a lot going on at the time. Clearly we had a lot of pressure, to keep the job moving. But yet a lot of pressure to make sure the birds are staying safe. So watching everyone come together and collaborate and come up with a plan that works for everyone, it works for the birds, it was very impressive to watch. And I think that was probably the biggest point of this whole process was the very first time we all got together and really were collaborating and watching that movement happen.
It really comes down to communication, having DOT and the contractors constantly communicating with me, giving me updates. One of the recommendations that FWC makes is that they have what we call bird monitors. So they hired their own contractors to act as bird monitors, and these are also biologists that are out there pretty much anytime work is occurring on that site. You have a monitor out there that is pretty much eyes on that nest or eyes on the chicks and kind of just monitoring on a daily basis what they're doing, where they're going, do they look distressed, does it look like the equipment is causing them to scurry away and run elsewhere. That would be an indicator that our buffer zone is not large enough, or maybe people are just getting too close. And then those are things that we would discuss with the contractors. Hey, could you maybe stop doing work for a week, let this chick get a little bit older, so that the parents calm down. Anytime the parents get kind of upset like that, it can always lead to something happening to the chicks.
So the CEI team actually oversaw the nest while the birds were still there with the nest, and we were making sure everything was being maintained well and everything was good. We'd log it once a day, what the status was and whatnot. Once the hatching happened, then we had members of the DOT's team to come out, and they actually stood and watched the birds on a standing regular schedule. So it was something that we did collaborative. At that point, you have to keep in mind those birds are moving. So we had an area for them that was large enough where they could roam around, but still stay safe.
I think those chicks hatched about 7 or 8 days after my initial visit there. So those birds had been there about 4 weeks prior. So we were all kind of shocked because we thought we had maybe another 3 weeks of them incubating. And I opened the app one day to look at the photos, and I didn't see the eggs, and I was like, of course your heart dropped. You're like, did something happen? Did a predator get the eggs? And then I saw a little tiny chick running across in front of the camera. So that was great news that they were able to hatch. And then that becomes a whole nother set of issues, because when the chicks are mobile, they can run wherever they want to run.
So we came up with a protection area. So we basically silt fenced off a large area around the nest. This had 2 benefits. It kept our employees out and kept the birds safe from equipment and our personnel. Once the chick hatched, it actually kept it in until it matured and protected it from other wildlife. So it was a win-win solution. And we were able to continue our work based on that corridor size that we worked together on a team to decide on. And like I said, maintain our schedule and ultimately deliver this project on time.
I provided them with our actual official signs that say, it's like an American oyster catcher sign. It says, do not enter, American oyster catchers are nesting here, please keep your distance. So they were happy to post all those all around that boundary. The other side of the boundary was actually the end of kind of the bridge that they were building. So the other side was water, so that we weren't as concerned with things going on the other side. The other great thing with that area is that there was like a little man-made shoreline. So when the chicks were mobile, the parents were able to take them down towards the water, start teaching them how to forage, get them used to going in the water. Also, it's a great way for them to cool off and, start to learn how to be a real bird on their own. I just wanted to briefly touch on the imperiled beach nesting bird guidelines. Sometimes you'll hear them called IBNIBs, IBNB, just a short term. FWC likes its acronyms. We've been those guidelines have been being worked on for maybe about 5 or 6 years now. They just went live as of October 1st, 2024. And this document can be found online. It's a great resource for contractors, other state agencies, really anybody who is curious to learn more about these shorebirds.
And one of the strengths of the guidance that FWC uses is there is some flexibility built into it. And they're also tracking data. So we uploaded the data to the FWC database. It's a GIS database that tracks these. And I think with additional information, they're probably going to they'll be able to update their guidelines to capture more of these unique situations like this one.
And then in subsequent years, the American oyster catcher came back. So 2023 and 2024, we also had an American oyster catcher nest. But luckily, we did a lot of the legwork in 2022, so we were able to implement that solution in the subsequent years and, like I said, maintain overall schedule. The protection plan and concept has stayed the same, but the nest has changed locations, operations have changed, so we obviously meet and discuss specific parameters at that point in time when the nest does rear its head. So overall, like I said, the concept has stayed the same, but you know, some areas are next to an access road. This past nest was, so there's a lot more signage. There were speed limit signs, making sure people didn't exceed 5 miles an hour. Basically make sure that everyone stays out of that zone. So it depends where the location is of the nest.
One of the real delights was some of the staff on CEI really embraced their role as the day-to-day eyes, in addition to the biologists that we had on site observing, and including even some of the after hours. So we were only required to observe during construction, but even outside of construction, we had folks with interest in the success of these two birds that we ended up nicknaming Howie and Frankie after the Howard Franklin Bridge. But it started out with folks that had no experience in CEI with the American oystercatcher or beach nesting birds just in general, you know. And so there was staff that became educated through this process, and they really embraced it. And that included posting signs. We even had help, FWC needed help translating to Spanish some of the signs, which we got help through our contractors at the DOT to get that done. So it was a real collaborative effort. Both the contractor and CEI were invested in the success of these birds, and I think it really showed in the final outcome, which was successful fledging of the birds over multiple years.
We actually put flyers in everyone's paychecks, actually, so they all took them home, basically helped them identify American oyster catchers, and then we hosted training on site for awareness and also the protection requirements to make sure that people did not enter those limits and ultimately did not disrupt the American oyster catcher in its nest. It was pretty cool that first year to see the chick, you know, mature and become an oyster catcher, an adult oyster catcher that you know, can ultimately expand the population. So I think once they understood the parameters and why we're doing what we're doing, everyone was involved in the team and keeping an eye out for the oyster catcher.
Because of that collaboration with FWC, we're able to enact changes very quickly with the moving construction that's happening in the background.
The great thing that DOT did, and what I think made this so successful for these American oyster catchers, is that they reached out immediately. They didn't wait, right? If they had waited, who knows what would have happened? Maybe the birds would have been disturbed, and maybe they would have abandoned their nests. Maybe something might have happened to the eggs. It's hard to say what would have happened. But because they came out, they let FWC know, hey, we think something's going on here. Could someone come out and let us know what's going on? And at the end of the day, FWC wants to work with these contractors and other state agencies to make it successful for both the birds and for what's the sort of legal activities that are going on, right? But these birds do have protections. That's why these guidelines came out, to help people decipher, what can I do in a situation like that?
Due in part to the relationships the Florida Department of Transportation enjoys with its agency partners, project consultants and contractors, as well as other non-governmental organizations, transportation improvements, like those underway at the Howard Franklin Bridge, can become so much more than congestion relief. They become a vehicle for success. A success not only for the 700,000 residents of Tampa and St. Petersburg, who, in late 2025, will begin using the newly widened bridge crossing over Old Tampa Bay, but for the less than 500 breeding adults of American oyster catchers here in Florida, who are working hard to grow their species within a busy world that's not showing signs of slowing down anytime soon.